The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking. It hammered the black sedan, blurring the neon reflections on the pavement into a watercolor of blues and reds. Arthur Pendleton didn't flinch as his driver, a man built from quiet granite named Gavin, held the oversized umbrella. The chill of the October night bit at Arthur's cheeks, a welcome, sharp sensation after the stifling warmth of l'orangerie. He'd just closed a 9-figure deal over seared scallops and a wine that cost more than most people's cars. He felt nothing. It was just another Tuesday. He adjusted the cuff of his bespoke suit, his eyes already on the warm interior of the waiting Maybach. That's when he saw her. A small, pathetic bundle of rags huddled in the recessed doorway of a closed art gallery. She was drenched, her thin hair plastered to her skull, her knees drawn up to her chest. He guessed she was 9, maybe 10. A flicker of profound irritation passed through him. It was a failure of city management, a stain on the aesthetics of the neighborhood he largely owned. He was supposed to be feeling triumphant, not inconvenienced. He sighed, a plume of white in the cold air. "Wait," he muttered to Gavin. He stepped away from the car door, the rain instantly finding the gap between the umbrella and his shoulder. He reached into his inner pocket, bypassing the slim credit card case, and pulled out his money clip. It was thick with hundreds. He didn't count. He peeled off a substantial fold, enough to buy a car, let alone a meal, and strode toward the doorway. The girl didn't look up until his polished shoes, handmade in Italy and waterproofed to perfection, stopped inches from her torn sneakers. "Here," Arthur said, his voice the same clipped, impatient tone he used in the boardroom. He thrust the money toward her. "Go get a hotel. Get some food. Get out of the rain." The girl finally lifted her head. The streetlight caught her face, and Arthur felt an unexpected jolt. Her eyes weren't the dull, vacant pools of despair he was expecting. They were a clear, piercing shade of gray, and they were analyzing him. There was no gratitude. There was no fear. There was only assessment. She looked at the wad of cash in his hand, then back up at his face. "I can't accept that, sir," she said. Her voice was small but clear as a bell, cutting through the hiss of the rain. Arthur blinked. He actually blinked. What? He was a man who moved markets, who made governments tremble. He was not a man who was told no by anyone, let alone a gutter snipe. "It's money," he said, stating the obvious as if she were simple. "You clearly need it." She slowly, painfully, got to her feet. She was smaller than he thought, but she stood with a straight spine despite her shivering. "I do need it," she agreed softly. "But it's not mine. And taking it," she locked her gaze with his, "would make me just like him." Arthur Pendleton, a man who had an answer for everything, was left utterly, completely speechless. The money felt suddenly heavy and vulgar in his hand. Just like him? Before he could formulate a question, she turned, slipped deeper into the shadows of the alcove, and with a faint scraping sound, was gone. Arthur stood there for a full 10 seconds, the rain dripping from the brim of his coat, the wad of hundreds still extended into the empty air. Gavin, ever silent, watched his boss from the car. He had seen Arthur Pendleton stare down hostile boards and furious politicians. He had never in 20 years seen him look so thoroughly baffled. Arthur finally lowered his hand, clenching the money in his fist. He got into the car, the scent of wet wool and expensive leather filling his nostrils. "Sir?" Gavin asked, his eyes in the rearview mirror. Arthur didn't answer. He just stared out the window at the empty doorway, the girl's words echoing in his head. "It's not mine. And taking it would make me just like him." The words were a riddle, and Arthur Pendleton hated riddles he couldn't solve. He hated them even more than he hated the sight of poverty on his streets. He leaned forward. Gavin, forget the penthouse. Circle the block. Find her. Gavin nodded once. Yes, sir. The Maybach pulled silently away from the curb, its wipers beating a frantic rhythmic pulse against the storm. Arthur settled back, the irritation replaced by a new, unfamiliar sensation, a sharp, burning curiosity. He hadn't felt it in years. It was the feeling of a problem that money, for the first time in a very long time, couldn't immediately solve. And that, more than the 9-figure deal, was the most interesting thing that had happened to him all day. Gavin circled the block, then the next, and the one after that. The girl had vanished as if she were a ghost, a figment of the rain. "She's gone, sir," Gavin reported, his voice flat. "This area. There are maintenance tunnels, old service alleys. If she knows them, she's a mile away by now." Arthur grunted, drumming his fingers on the polished wood panel of the armrest. "Find her anyway. I want to know who she is. I want to know who he is." Gavin's eyes met his in the mirror. There was no judgment, just acceptance. "I'll put a team on it. Street-level contacts." "Do it," Arthur said. The car merged into the glittering flow of traffic, heading toward the sterile glass tower he called home. His penthouse occupied the entire 80th floor, a monument of steel and glass that offered panoramic views of the city he had conquered. Tonight, the city just looked wet and distant. He entered his silent apartment, the motion sensor lights blooming softly ahead of him. His son, Tristan, was draped over a white leather sofa, scrolling through his phone, a half-empty glass of what was probably Arthur's best scotch on the marble coaster beside him. Tristan was 24, with his father's features but none of his drive. He was a creature of soft fabrics and easy credit. "Rough night at the salt mines, Dad?" Tristan drawled, not looking up. "You're home early. Thought you'd be celebrating the Apex deal." "The deal is done," Arthur said, stripping off his suit jacket and handing it to a housekeeper who materialized from the shadows and then vanished just as quickly. "You're drinking my Macallan 30. "I'm savoring it," Tristan corrected, flashing a smile that was all surface. "To your success." Arthur looked at his son, at the expensive, deliberately distressed jeans, the perfect hair, the air of bored entitlement. He felt the familiar, acidic tang of disappointment. This was his legacy. A boy who had never been told no in his life, who had never faced a problem that couldn't be solved by the Pendleton name. He thought of the girl in the rain, her small, straight spine, her clear gray eyes, her impossible refusal. "I offered a homeless girl $10,000 tonight," Arthur said, walking to the bar to pour his own drink. Tristan finally looked up, intrigued. 10 grand? In cash? What, was she hot? Arthur's hand tightened on the decanter. "She was a child." "Oh." Tristan lost interest, his thumb resuming its flicking motion. "Weird. Why'd you do that? Feeling charitable?" "She refused it," Arthur said, swirling the amber liquid. Tristan laughed, a short barking sound. "No, she didn't. Nobody refuses that. She was playing you, Dad. Probably wanted 20. Should have called the cops." "She said," Arthur continued, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window and staring down at the city, a carpet of glittering circuits, "that taking it would make her just like him." "Him? Him who? Her pimp?" Tristan scoffed. "You got played. She's probably laughing about it right now in her warm, cozy, wherever they go." Arthur took a sip of the scotch. It tasted like ash. "She was telling the truth." "Truth?" Tristan swung his legs off the sofa. "Dad, come on. You live in the real world. These people, they're not like us. They don't think like us. They're all transactional. It's all a game, a hustle. You, of all people, should know that." "They're not like us." The words hung in the sterile air. Arthur looked at his son, a perfect product of the world he had built, and felt a cold, hollowing dread. He was right. She wasn't like them. That was the entire, terrifying point. "Go to bed, Tristan," Arthur said, his voice flat. "You're an heir, not a philosopher." Tristan's face tightened at the familiar sting, but he stood, grabbing his phone. "Whatever. Don't let the bedbugs bite, I guess. Or the street rats." He sauntered off toward his own wing of the penthouse, leaving Arthur alone with the rain lashing against the glass and the memory of two impossibly clear, impossibly proud gray eyes. For the next 2 days, Arthur was consumed. He sat in board meetings, his gaze distant, his mind replaying the 30-second encounter. His team presented Q4 projections. He saw a girl's soaked hair. His lawyers discussed litigation. He heard a small voice cutting through the rain. He had Gavin's team pull security footage from every camera on that block. They found her. A grainy, pixelated ghost. They watched her slip out of the alley after Arthur's car left. She didn't go to a shelter. She walked 6 blocks in the downpour to a 24-hour laundromat, where she spent 2 hours sitting behind a row of dryers, pulling something from her jacket and writing in it by the dim fluorescent light. It was a notebook, a small, battered-looking journal. Then she slipped out again, disappearing into a service entrance of the public library just before it opened. Gavin's men were good. They were waiting when she came out, but they kept their distance, just as Arthur had instructed. "Her name is Lila," Gavin reported, standing in Arthur's office. The name was wrong. He'd heard Lily in his head. "Lila," Arthur repeated. "Lila. What?" "No last name on record. She's 10. She's been in and out of the shelter system for the last 6 months. Fell off the grid about 3 weeks ago. Before that, nothing. She doesn't exist before 6 months ago." "That's impossible," Arthur snapped. "Everyone exists. Run facial recognition against school databases, hospital records. We are, sir. So far, nothing. The system knows her as Lila J. The J is for Jane." Gavin slid a tablet across the polished mahogany desk. On the screen was a photo, a candid shot taken from across a street. She was huddled on a park bench eating a sandwich. She looked pale, exhausted, but her eyes were alert, constantly scanning. And in her lap, her hands were protectively clamped on a small, worn, leather-bound book, the journal. "She's protecting it," Arthur murmured. "What's in the book?" "Unknown. She never lets it go. Sleeps with it inside her jacket. My operative got close to her at the library. She's not reading children's books. She's in the legal and financial reference sections, looking up terms, embezzlement, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty." Arthur felt the jolt again. This was not a runaway. This was a what? A fugitive? "Where is she now?" "Shelter on the Lower East Side. They close intake in 1 hour. She'll be there for the night." "Get the car," Arthur said, standing up. "Sir?" Gavin raised an eyebrow, the closest he ever came to questioning an order. "You're going to the shelter?" "I'm not going to the shelter. I'm going to be at the shelter. Get the car." The shelter was a grim, gray building, smelling of bleach and boiled potatoes. Arthur's Maybach was parked a block away, in the shadow of a rusted overpass. Arthur watched the entrance. He saw the line of defeated, shuffling figures. And then he saw her, the last one in line. She looked smaller, more fragile under the harsh sodium lights. "Okay," Arthur said, his voice quiet. "She's in. Now we wait." They waited for 3 hours. The night deepened. The city's pulse slowed. At 1:14 a.m., Gavin's phone buzzed. He read the text. "He's in." "He?" "A new arrival at the shelter. Male, mid-30s. Didn't check in at the desk. Used a service entrance. He's moving through the cots in the family section, looking for her. My man inside says he matches the description of a man who was asking about Lila at the laundromat yesterday." A predator. Arthur's stomach tightened. "Get her out, now." "Sir, creating a scene. I don't care. Get her out." Gavin was already out of the car. He moved with a speed that belied his size. Arthur watched the shelter's side door. 2 minutes later, it burst open. Gavin emerged, a large hand firmly on the shoulder of the small, struggling girl. She was fighting him, kicking at his shins, a tiny, silent fury. "Let go of me. I'm not. Let go." Gavin half carried her to the car and opened the rear door. "In," he commanded. Lila stumbled, caught herself, and then froze. She saw Arthur Pendleton sitting in the buttery leather interior. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in shocked recognition. She looked from Arthur to Gavin, back to Arthur. "You," she breathed. "You're the one from the restaurant." "Get in the car, Lila," Arthur said. His voice was calm, but it was not a request. "Why? So you can call the cops? I didn't do anything. If I wanted the cops, they'd be here. You're in danger. There's a man in that shelter looking for you. Now get in." She hesitated, her small body trembling, caught between the known danger of the shelter and the unknown danger of this impossibly rich, powerful man. "The book," she whispered, her hand flying to her jacket. "He's after my book." "He won't get it," Arthur said. "I give you my word. Get in." She stared at him for one more second, her gray eyes searching his. Whatever she found there, it was enough. She scrambled into the car, sliding to the farthest corner of the seat, her back pressed against the door as if for a quick escape. She was clutching the front of her jacket, the journal a hard, rectangular shape beneath the thin fabric. Gavin got in the driver's seat, the doors locked with a heavy, expensive thunk, and the car glided away from the curb. They drove in silence for several minutes. The only sound was the girl's ragged, shallow breathing. She stared out the window, tracking their path. "You're not taking me to the police," she stated. "No," Arthur said. "Or social services. No. Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe." He watched her. She was a bundle of sharp angles and simmering intelligence. "The man in the shelter?" Arthur asked. "Who is he?" "I don't know his name. He works for Marcus." The name landed in the quiet car. Marcus, not him. A name. "Marcus who?" Lila's head snapped around. Her eyes were suddenly fierce. "Why are you asking? What do you want from me?" "I want to know why a 10-year-old girl is sleeping in doorways and reading about corporate fraud in the public library. I want to know why she'd refuse $10,000 because it would make her just like him." Layla's face closed, the shutters slamming down. "I'm not stupid. You're rich. Like, really rich." She gestured at the opulent car. "You're friends with people like him. You're probably just trying to get the journal and give it to him." Arthur almost smiled. "Him? You mean Marcus?" "Marcus Thorne," she spat, the name tasting like poison. The name hit Arthur like a physical blow. Marcus Thorne. He knew that name. Thorne. CEO of Thorne Industries, a competitor, a ruthless new money shark who had come out of nowhere 5 years ago, building an empire on a revolutionary new energy patent. Arthur had crossed paths with him at galas. He'd always disliked the man's oily charm and hungry eyes. "You know him," Lila said, reading Arthur's expression. "See? I knew it." "I know of him," Arthur corrected, his mind racing. "He's not a friend. Why is he after you? Why does he want that book?" Lila looked down, her small, chapped hands tracing the outline of the journal through her jacket. "It was my mom's," she whispered. "It has the truth. It has everything." The car pulled into a private, underground garage beneath a sleek, anonymous glass skyscraper. This wasn't Arthur's penthouse. It was one of his corporate apartments, high-end, secure, and completely sterile. Gavin led them to a private elevator. Lila flinched at the sudden movement, but she followed, her eyes darting everywhere. The apartment was vast and empty, furnished in shades of white and gray. It smelled like new carpet and air conditioning. Lila stood in the center of the living room, looking like a small lost bird in a marble cage. "You'll be safe here," Arthur said, his voice echoing slightly in the large space. "Gavin will be outside the door. No one gets in or out without my permission. The fridge is stocked. There's a shower. New clothes are in the closet. They'll be too big, but they're clean." Lila just stared at him, her arms still crossed over her chest. "Why are you doing this?" Arthur paused. It was a fair question. Why? Because it was a puzzle. Because he was bored. Because her pride had pricked his own. "Let's call it an investment," Arthur said. "I'm investing in an answer. I give you safety. You give me the truth. Who is Marcus Thorne to you?" Lila walked over to the window, which offered a staggering view of the city lights. She stood there for a long time, her small reflection staring back at her. "He was my father's best friend," she said, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear it. "They built a company together. My dad. He invented something amazing. A new way to make batteries. Cheaper, cleaner. He drew it all. He wrote it all in a book for my mom to explain it to her." She touched her jacket. "This book." She turned to face him, her small face pale and set. "And Marcus Thorne stole it. He stole the company, he stole the patent, and he framed my dad." "Framed him?" "He said my dad stole money. Embezzlement, that was the word I was looking up. He said my dad was a thief. The police came. They took him. My mom got sick. She got really sick. We lost our house. We lost everything." She was trembling now, but her voice was steady, fueled by a cold, adult rage. "My mom died 2 months ago. Before she died, she gave me the journal. She said, 'This is the proof, Lila. This is your father's heart. Don't let Marcus find it. Don't. Don't become like them. Don't ever take what isn't yours.'" Her gray eyes locked on his. "That's why I couldn't take your money. It's not mine. It's just like what Marcus did. He took what wasn't his, and it killed my mom. And it put my dad in prison." Arthur stood perfectly still. The world had shifted on its axis. This wasn't a runaway. This was the daughter of David Hannigan. It all clicked into place. David Hannigan. The brilliant engineer. 5 years ago, the story had been all over the financial papers. The disgraced CEO of Hannigan Thorne Energy, imprisoned for embezzling millions. And Marcus Thorne, the stoic partner, had tearfully taken over, saving the company and rebranding it as Thorne Industries. The company built on the revolutionary patent. "Your father," Arthur said slowly, "is David Hannigan." Lila flinched, shocked that he knew the name. He's not a thief," she whispered, tears finally welling in her eyes, hot and angry. "He's not. And this book proves it." She pulled the journal from her coat. It was a simple, brown leather book, its corners soft with age, the cover stained and warped. It looked like nothing, and it was everything. "May I?" Arthur asked, holding out his hand. Lila clutched it. "You'll give it to him." "Lila," Arthur said, his voice softer than he'd intended. "If what you're saying is true, Marcus Thorne isn't just a thief. He's a very powerful, very dangerous man. That journal, it's useless if you're dead in an alley. You can't read it. You can't use it. I can." "Why would you help me?" she asked, the question raw and desperate. "Why do you care?" Arthur looked at the girl, her fierce, impossible pride, her tiny frame vibrating with injustice. He thought of his own son, asleep in a bed worth more than her father's entire defense fund. He thought of the empty, sterile life he had built, a fortress of money that kept everything out, including, he realized, himself. "Because," Arthur said, meeting her gaze, "I hate Marcus Thorne. I hate thieves. And I hate losing." He kept his hand extended. "You've kept it safe this far. Now let me help you use it." Lila watched him, her chest heaving. She was a 10-year-old child, alone, carrying a burden that would have crushed most adults. She had two options: the man who hunted her, or the man who had, for no logical reason, saved her. Slowly, her small, dirty fingers uncurled. She took a step forward and placed the worn leather journal into Arthur Pendleton's outstretched hand. The weight of it was surprising, heavy as a brick, heavy as a life. "His name," she whispered, a single tear tracing a clean path down her grimy cheek, "is David. My father's name is David. And he's innocent." Arthur didn't sleep. He sat in the sterile white living room, Gavin standing guard by the door, and read. The apartment was silent, save for the sound of the shower running in the guest bathroom, Lila scrubbing away weeks of grime, and the soft turning of pages. The journal was not a smoking gun, not at first. It was a love story. It was Sarah Hannigan's journal, and it began full of hope. "David is possessed. He's been in the garage for 3 days, covered in grease, drinking coffee. He thinks he's found it. A new cathode. He says it could change everything. He's like a child, so brilliant, so pure. I call it his magic battery." Arthur read about the beginning of the company, about David bringing in his college friend Marcus Thorne to handle the business side that David loathed. Marcus is a godsend. He's so smooth, so confident. He found our first round of seed funding. He says David is the brain, and he is the mouth. They make a perfect team. The entries continued. The company grew. They got an office. They hired staff. Then, the tone began to shift. A subtle chill creeping into the pages. Marcus wants to file the patent under the company's name, not David's. He says it's for protection. David agreed. He trusts him completely. I don't. There's something in his eyes sometimes. A hunger. Arthur's own hands tightened. He knew that hunger. He saw it in the mirror every morning. But this was different. This was a predator's hunger. He read on, faster now. Sarah Hannigan was no fool. She began to document things. Marcus is setting up offshore accounts. He says it's for tax efficiency. He made David sign the papers. David just signs. He's so focused on the lab, on making the prototype smaller, better. He doesn't see what I see. And then, the key. A full 2-page entry, written in a frantic, hurried script. It's happening. Marcus is moving money, not out of the company, but through it. He's created a ghost shell company. He's filtering funds to it from an external source, then back into Hannigan Thorne. But he's coding it to look like it's coming from David's personal accounts. He's building a false trail. He's framing him. I found the ledger, in his desk. I took a picture. But it's not enough. He's too smart. He found me looking. The next entry was chilling. "David, I'm scared. Marcus knows." He confronted me. He smiled. He told me to stop being a paranoid housewife. But his eyes, they were dead. He said, "David is a genius, Sarah, but geniuses don't run the world. Men like me do." The last few entries were sparse, written from a cheap motel. He did it. The police came. They took David. He was so confused. He just kept saying, "It's a mistake. Tell Marcus to fix it." "Oh, David, my love, I'm sick. The stress. I can't breathe. I have this book. It's all I have. Layla, if you read this, know your father is a good man. Know he was betrayed. The proof is in the numbers, the patent number, the original file, the ghost account. It's all here. Don't trust anyone. Be brave. I love you." The journal ended. Arthur closed it, his knuckles white. He sat in the silence, the weight of the story settling on him. He had seen corporate malfeasance. This was evil. It was the calculated destruction of a good man and his family. The shower had stopped. A small sound came from the hallway. Lila was standing there, wearing a gray cashmere robe that was ludicrously large on her, her damp hair dark. She looked clean, pale, and utterly exhausted. "You read it," she said. It wasn't a question. "I read it," Arthur confirmed, his voice rough. "She was smart. Your mother." "She was a high school librarian," Lila said, her voice catching. "She loved books. She loved facts." "She's right," Arthur said, tapping the journal. "The patent number. The original file. If Thorne filed the patent after he'd set up the ghost accounts, he'd have to backdate the transfer of intellectual property. If your father never signed that transfer, it's the whole case." "He never did," Lila said. "My mom said he kept all his original blueprints and notes in a safe deposit box. The key. She gave me the key." She reached into the pocket of the oversized robe and pulled out a small, tarnished silver locket. It looked like a child's piece of jewelry. "She told me to wear it. It's not a locket." She fumbled with the clasp. It didn't open like a locket. The face of it slid to the side, revealing a tiny, intricate key. A safe deposit box key. Arthur stared at it. "Where is the box?" "First National Bank. Downtown. The one. The one near our old house." She said, "Don't go there until you have someone you can trust. Someone powerful enough." Her gray eyes met his. "Are you powerful enough?" Arthur felt a strange, protective surge. So primal it startled him. It was a feeling he hadn't had since before his wife passed, before Tristan became a disappointment. "Yes," he said, "I am." The next morning, Arthur Pendleton's world kicked into high gear. He didn't just have lawyers, he had a standing army of them. He brought in his chief counsel, a woman named Eleanor Vance, a shark in a Chanel suit who had handled his most aggressive acquisitions. He sat her and Gavin down in his private penthouse study. Lila was still asleep in the corporate apartment, guarded by two more of Gavin's men. Arthur laid out the journal. He explained the situation. Eleanor, to her credit, didn't blink. "David Hannigan," she murmured, tapping a pen against her teeth. "I remember that. It was too clean." The man confessed. "He was coerced," Arthur said, "or he made a plea to protect his family, not knowing his wife was already on the run." "Marcus Thorne," Eleanor continued, her eyes sharp. "He's a major player. His company is valued at $50 billion. His patents are his crown jewels. If you challenge the legitimacy of that core patent—" "You cut the head off the snake," Arthur finished. "Exactly. Lila Hannigan is the heir to that intellectual property. If her father never signed it away, Thorne Industries is built on a foundation of theft. He didn't just frame David Hannigan for embezzlement, he stole his entire life's work." "This is explosive, Arthur," Eleanor warned. "Thorne will fight, and he will fight dirty. He'll claim the girl is a grifter. He'll use his power to crush us in the press." "He can try," Arthur said, a cold fire in his belly. "First, the safe deposit box. Gavin, I need you to get into First National. Legally, that box belongs to the Hannigan estate, with Sarah Hannigan deceased and David indisposed. Lila is the beneficiary, but she's a minor. It's a legal mess." "I can get a court order," Eleanor said, already typing on her tablet. "But I'll need a judge I trust. It will take 24 hours, and it will alert Thorne. The moment we file, he'll know something is happening." "Then we don't do it legally," Arthur said. Gavin looked up. "Sir, I want to see what's in that box before Thorne knows we're looking. This isn't a hostile takeover, Gavin. This is a rescue mission. I want you to get into that vault." Gavin nodded. It was a $1 billion order, delivered as calmly as a request for coffee. "The bank manager at that branch, a Mr. Henderson, he has a significant gambling problem. Pendleton Global holds the note on his mortgage. I can be persuasive." "Do it," Arthur said. "Tonight. Eleanor, you prepare for war. Assume we get the blueprints. Assume they're dated, signed, and indisputable. I want a full injunction filed against Thorn Industries, a motion to freeze his assets, and a petition for a new trial for David Hannigan. I want it all ready to drop on a judge's desk the second I give the word. This will be the biggest fight of your life, Arthur, Eleanor said, standing. It could get very, very public. Good, Arthur said. Let them watch. He went to check on Lila. He'd had his housekeeper, Maria, buy a trunk full of clothes, books, and art supplies. He found Lila not drawing, but sitting at the desk, using the provided laptop. She was on a simple word processor, typing. She had created a timeline. She was cross-referencing dates from her mother's journal with public news articles about Thorn Industries' launch. She had spreadsheets. She was 10 years old. "You're organized," Arthur said, leaning against the doorframe. She jumped, startled. I'm just putting the facts in order, like my mom taught me." He walked over. Her work was meticulous. June 10th. Mom mentions Marcus's ghost account. June 14th. Thorn Industries files for LLC Incorporation. June 20th. Dad is arrested. July 1st. Thorn announces new leadership and the acquisition of the Hannigan patent. "It's all right there," she whispered, her finger tracing the screen. "He did it all at once." "Yes, he did," Arthur said. He sat down across from her. "Lila, this is going to get difficult. This man, Marcus, he's not going to, just give up. I know. He'll say things about you, about your mother, about your father. He will lie. They've already been lying for 5 years, Lila said, her voice hard. I'm not scared of his words." Arthur looked at her, this small, resilient child. He felt a sudden, sharp clarity. His whole life had been about acquisition, buying companies, buying buildings, buying loyalty. But this was different. This was justice. It was a clean, pure, unfamiliar motive. "I'm moving you to the penthouse," he said. "You'll be safer there. And I'd like to keep you close." Lila looked up, her gray eyes searching his. "Okay," she said. "But I have a condition." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Oh? I want to see my father." The request was so simple, so devastating, it knocked the air from him. "Lila, he's in a maximum security prison. It's not a place for a child." "I don't care," she said, her chin trembling but her gaze firm. "He thinks I'm dead. Or lost. My mom. When we went into the shelter system, she used a different name for me, to hide me from Marcus. My dad. He doesn't know where I am. He probably thinks we both. I need him to know I'm fighting. I need him to be strong. Please." Arthur saw the unbending steel in her. It was the same steel that had refused his money in the rain. "I'll arrange it," he said. "I promise." That night, Gavin performed his miracle. He returned to the penthouse at 3 a.m., carrying a long, sealed document tube. Arthur was waiting, nursing a scotch. Lila was asleep in a guest room that was 4 times the size of her last motel room. "Well?" Arthur asked. Gavin placed the tube on the desk. Henderson was cooperative. The box contained these original hand-drawn schematics, meticulously dated, a lab notebook detailing every step of the invention, and, he pulled a thin file from his jacket, the original partnership agreement for Hannigan Thorn. The intellectual property clause clearly states all patents remain the sole and non-transferable property of David Hannigan, licensed to the company. He never signed it away, Arthur. Arthur opened the document tube. He unrolled the top blueprint. It was beautiful, intricate, precise, and signed at the bottom. David Hannigan, April 2nd. 2 full months before Thorn had even incorporated his ghost company. It was the smoking gun. It was the head of the snake. "He has him," Arthur breathed. "He's got him." Just as he said it, his personal phone rang. An unknown number. He glanced at Gavin, then answered. Pendleton. You're a hard man to find, Arthur. The voice was smooth, oily, and instantly recognizable. Marcus Thorne. I prefer it that way, Marcus. What do you want? I hear you've picked up a stray, Thorne said, his voice laced with false amusement. A little girl. It's a touching story. Billionaire plays daddy to a street rat. Very humanitarian. Arthur's blood ran cold. How did you? Oh, please. You think you can move a muscle in this city without me knowing? You've been digging. You went to the prison. You filed for a visitor's pass for Lila Hannigan. You're not subtle, Arthur. What do you want? Arthur repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. I want my property. The girl. She stole something from her mother, a worthless, sentimental diary. I want it back. Give her to me, Arthur. Give me the book. And this little misunderstanding. It all goes away. We can even, perhaps, discuss a merger. Pendleton and Thorne. We'd be unstoppable. Arthur looked at the blueprints on his desk. He looked toward the hallway where Lila was sleeping. Let me be clear, Marcus, Arthur said, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. The girl is under my protection. The journal is under my protection. And as of 9 a.m. tomorrow, when the markets open, you're going to have a very, very bad day. You're making a mistake, Thorne hissed, the charm gone. You don't know who you're dealing with. I built my empire from nothing. I will not let a child and a washed-up old man take it from me. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy her. I'll leak to the press that you're holding a minor, that you're obsessed with her. I'll ruin you. You do that, Arthur said, and I'll see you in court. And then, I'll see you in prison. He hung up. He looked at Gavin. He knows. He's desperate. He just threatened her. Gavin's face was grim. My team is on every door. He can't get in here. He won't try to get in here, Arthur said. He'll try to get to the one person we can't protect. Hannigan, Gavin said, in prison. Get the car, Arthur said, and call the warden. Tell him I'm on my way, and I'm bringing a gift. At the same time, in the penthouse, a different kind of confrontation was brewing. Tristan Pendleton had come home late from a club, drunk and angry. He'd had his credit card declined. Arthur had put a limit on it. Fuming, he'd stormed into the apartment, only to be stopped by one of Gavin's men. You can't go in the East Wing, Mr. Pendleton. The hell I can't. Tristan slurred. This is my house. Who the hell are you? He shoved past the guard who didn't budge. Sir, your father's orders. My father's not even here. He heard a noise from the kitchen. He rounded the corner and found Lila, unable to sleep, pouring a glass of milk. She was wearing a pair of his old, cast-off designer pajamas that Maria had found for her. Tristan stopped. He stared. You, he said, his voice dripping with disbelief and contempt. You're the rat. The one he gave the money to. Layla stood her ground, clutching the milk. My name is Lila. I don't care what your name is. Tristan sneered, advancing on her. What are you doing here? This is my house. You're a prop. That's what you are. Some charity case he's using to feel good about himself. I'm not a charity case, Lila said, her voice quiet. Your father is helping me. Helping you? Tristan laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. He doesn't help people. He buys them. So what's your price, huh? What did you finally settle on? More than 10 grand, I bet. What are you, his new pet? He was close now, looming over her. Layla didn't back down. You're just like him, she whispered. Who? Tristan demanded. Marcus, she said. The man who hurt my family. You think because you have money, you can say whatever you want. You think it makes you better than everyone, but you're just empty. All that money, and there's nothing inside you. It was the truth, and it hit Tristan harder than a physical blow. He saw himself, for a fleeting, terrible second, through her clear, unblinking gray eyes. A spoiled, pathetic, hollow man. His face twisted in rage, not at her, but at the reflection she had shown him. "Get out," he hissed, his hand balling into a fist. "You're nothing. You're trash." He raised his hand. He wasn't sure what he was going to do. Smack the milk away. Push her. But he raised it. "Mr. Pendleton." Gavin's voice was a crack of thunder. He had re-entered the apartment, having seen Arthur off. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, his expression murderous. Tristan froze, his hand in the air. He looked at the massive security man, then at the small, unmoving girl. And he suddenly felt pathetic. The rage evaporated, leaving only a cold, sickening shame. He lowered his hand. He looked at Lila, at her defiant, terrified, pitying eyes. He couldn't stand it. He turned and fled, stumbling back to his room, slamming the door. Lila stood alone in the vast kitchen, her small body trembling. Gavin walked over. "Are you all right, Miss Lila?" She nodded, still clutching the glass. He's very lost," she whispered. Gavin looked at the door Tristan had slammed. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "He is." The visitor's room at the prison was a small, gray box divided by thick, smeared glass. Arthur sat on one side. On the other, a man who looked 20 years older than his photographs. David Hannigan was thin, with haunted eyes, and the gray pallor of a man who hadn't seen the sun in half a decade. He shambled in, chained, and sat heavily. He looked at Arthur with dull confusion. "Who are you?" His voice was a rusty whisper. "My name is Arthur Pendleton," Arthur said, leaning toward the intercom. "I know you're innocent." David's head snapped up. A spark of life flared in his dead eyes. "What? Who? Who sent you? Is it Sarah? Is she—" "I haven't heard." "David," Arthur said, his voice gentle but firm. "Sarah. Your wife passed away. 2 months ago." The spark died. David Hannigan slumped, his whole body caving in. "Oh God, no, I knew it. I knew. I couldn't feel her anymore, and my daughter, Lila, my little girl." "She's safe," Arthur said quickly. "She's with me. She's the one who found me, David. She's the one who's been fighting for you." David looked up, his face a mask of uncomprehending grief. "Lila? She's alive? But how?" "She's a remarkable child," Arthur said. "She kept your wife's journal. She kept the key." David's eyes widened. "The box. She told me she'd—" "I have it," Arthur said. "I have the blueprints. I have the notebook. I have the partnership agreement. I have everything, David." David Hannigan began to weep. Not loud but silent, shuddering sobs that shook his entire frame. He took everything. "And now we're going to take it back," Arthur said, his voice a steel rod. "Marcus Thorne knows. He called me. He's desperate. Which means he's dangerous. He might try to silence you, to make this all go away." "I'm already dead," David whispered. "No, you're not," Arthur commanded. "You're a father, and your daughter is waiting for you. I have posted a legal team at this prison. They are here right now, filing for an emergency protection order. No one gets in to see you. Your food is monitored. You are not alone anymore. Do you understand?" David looked at Arthur, the billionaire he'd never met, the savior who had come out of nowhere. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Arthur thought of Lila, of her clear gray eyes. He thought of his own empty life. "Your daughter," Arthur said, "reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that some things aren't for sale. Now listen to me. Eleanor Vance, my lawyer, will be here in the morning. She is filing for an immediate retrial based on new evidence. It will be granted. The evidence is irrefutable. David nodded, scrubbing his face with his shackled hands. Tell Lila. Tell her. Tell her I love her. Tell her Daddy's so proud. I have a better idea, Arthur said, standing. I'm bringing her tomorrow. For a real visit. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Eleanor Vance, armed with the blueprints and Sarah's journal, descended on the courts like a force of nature. A judge, a man Arthur had known for 30 years, reviewed the evidence in a closed chamber. His face grew grim. He signed the emergency order for David's protection. He signed the injunction to freeze Marcus Thorne's personal and corporate assets. And he signed the order for an immediate, expedited retrial. At 9:01 a.m., the moment the injunction hit, trading on Thorne Industries was halted. The financial world erupted. News vans, catching the scent of blood, descended on Arthur's building and on the Thorne Industries headquarters. The story was everywhere. Pendleton challenges. Thorne, alleging massive fraud. Disgraced engineer Hannigan to get new trial. Marcus Thorne was trapped. His assets were frozen. His reputation was in tatters. He tried to flee the country, but Arthur had anticipated it. Gavin's team had alerted airport authorities. Thorne was detained at Teterboro, his private jet fueled and ready. He was arrested, not for the fraud, not yet, but for violating the terms of the asset freeze. The beast was caged. Arthur sat in his office watching the news ticker on his screen. He felt a deep, profound sense of peace. It was done. But it wasn't over. The prison visit was different this time. No glass. A private room, secured by guards. Arthur and Gavin stood by the door. Lila waited in the center of the room, her hands knotted together, wearing a simple new dress, her hair brushed. The door opened. David Hannigan walked in, not in chains, but in a clean visitor's uniform. He was shaved. He looked human. He looked like a father. He saw her. Lila, he breathed. Daddy. Lila ran. She launched herself into his arms, and he caught her, burying his face in her hair, his whole body shaking. They sank to the floor, just holding each other, a torrent of 5 years of pain, grief, and loss pouring out of both of them. I thought I'd lost you, David wept, kissing her face, her hair. I thought you and Mom. Mom's gone, Daddy. Lila sobbed into his chest. But she saved us. She gave me the book. She told me to be brave. Oh, Sarah, my smart, brave Sarah. I missed you so much, Lila cried. I missed you so much. Arthur turned away, a knot in his throat so tight he couldn't swallow. He felt Gavin's presence beside him. He looked over. The stoic, granite-like man was blinking, his eyes wet. Arthur put a hand on his shoulder. It was a gesture of shared humanity he never would have made a week ago. They let them have an hour. When they emerged, David Hannigan looked like a new man. The light was back in his eyes. He had a purpose. He had his daughter. He shook Arthur's hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Mr. Pendleton. Arthur. There are no words. How can I ever? You can't, Arthur said simply. And you don't need to. Go win your life back. Your daughter has done all the hard work. The retrial was a formality. The evidence was absolute. The original blueprints, the lab notebook, Sarah's journal detailing the fraud, and a forensic accounting team that had unraveled Thorne's ghost company in a single day. Marcus Thorne, facing a lifetime in prison, took a plea. He confessed to everything. The wire fraud, the embezzlement he'd framed David for, the theft of intellectual property. He was sentenced to 30 years. Thorne Industries was dismantled. The core patents were returned to their rightful owner, David Hannigan. The press conference was on the steps of the courthouse. David Hannigan, a free man, stood with his arm around Lila. He was gaunt, but his smile was radiant. I have many people to thank, he said, his voice thick with emotion. My lawyers. My late, brilliant wife, Sarah, who never stopped believing. But most of all, I want to thank my daughter, my hero, Layla. She saved my life. Lila, blinking in the flashbulbs, just hugged her father's waist. Arthur Pendleton watched from the back of the crowd, unseen. He had been offered a place at the podium, but he had refused. This was not his victory. It was theirs. As the crowd surged, a figure broke away and approached him. It was Tristan. He looked terrible. He hadn't slept. He was wearing a simple, clean-pressed suit. He looked for the first time like an adult. "Dad," he said. Arthur nodded. "Tristan." I watched the trial," Tristan said, his voice low. "I saw what Lila, did. She was right. What she said to me. In the kitchen." He took a shaky breath. "I'm ashamed, Dad. I'm ashamed of me." Arthur looked at his son. The disappointment was gone, replaced by a flicker of something else. Hope. "Shame," Arthur said, "is a start. It's what you do with it that matters." Tristan nodded. I want to help. With them. The Hannigans. They have nothing. I want to help them rebuild. Not with your money. With me. I don't know. I can learn." Arthur felt the knot in his throat return. He put a hand on Tristan's shoulder. This time, it felt right. "I think," Arthur said, "that's a very good idea. I think you should go introduce yourself." Tristan looked at the crowd, terrified, but he took a breath, straightened his tie, and walked toward the Hannigans. Epilogue. 6 months later. It was spring. The cherry blossoms were exploding in a riot of pink and white. Arthur was not in his penthouse. He was in the backyard of a modest, comfortable suburban house, a house he had bought, but had put in a trust for Lila Hannigan. He was on his knees, in the dirt, wearing old jeans. Beside him, Lila was directing him on how to plant a small maple tree. "No, Arthur," she said, her voice full of 10-year-old exasperation. "The roots need to spread out. You're crowding it." "I'm a finance guy, Lila, not a gardener," Arthur grumbled, but he was smiling. He was smiling a lot lately. David Hannigan came out onto the porch carrying a tray of lemonade. He was gaining weight. His hair was thicker. He looked happy. "How's the new company, David?" Arthur asked. "It's small," David said, beaming. "It's me and 2 engineers in my garage, just like the old days, and it's wonderful. We're already working on something new." Tristan came around the side of the house, pushing a wheelbarrow. He was sweating. He'd been working for David for 4 months, for free, as an apprentice. He was essentially a glorified intern, fetching coffee and filing papers, and he had never looked happier. "Tree's hole is dug, boss," he said to Lila. "Good," Lila said, giving him a critical look. "Now go get the mulch." Tristan nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He winked at his father and went. Arthur looked at Lila, her face smudged with dirt, her gray eyes bright in the sun. "You know," he said, "you're a very demanding boss." "I learned from the best," she said, with a smile that was all Sarah. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small, tarnished locket. It was no longer a key. She had found a jeweler to fix it. She opened it. Inside was a tiny, faded picture of her mother and father. "My mom," she said softly. Arthur nodded, his heart full. "She would be so proud of you, Lila." "I know," Lila said. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out a tiny, new photo, printed from a home computer. It was a picture taken last week. It was her, and David, and Arthur, and a grudgingly smiling Tristan, all standing around this very same unplanted tree. "I think," Lila said, carefully fitting the new picture into the other side of the locket, "we're going to need a bigger one." She snapped it shut and looked up at Arthur, her eyes, those clear, gray, impossible eyes, full of a light that outshone the sun. "It's perfect," she said. Arthur Pendleton looked at the small girl, at the new tree, at the happy father on the porch, and at his own son, hauling a bag of mulch. He thought of the man he was 6 months ago, alone in his glass tower, a man who thought money could solve everything. He had been so wrong. Money hadn't solved this. A 10-year-old girl with nothing but a book and a backbone had. She hadn't just saved her father. She had, in the end, saved them all. We hope you were as moved by Lila's story of courage and Arthur's journey to redemption as we were. Stories like this remind us that true value isn't in our wallets, but in our connections, our integrity, and the courage to fight for what is right. If you loved this emotional journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And please, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that even in the darkest times, one small light can change everything. What did you think of Arthur's transformation? Let us know in the comments below.